A $10,000 ticket for seat 1A, a PhD in communications, a reputation for solving the unsolvable. Dr. Lena Morgan had all of this. But when she stepped onto the plane, flight attendant Karen Reynolds saw only one thing. "This cabin isn't for you," Karen said, her voice dripping with condescension. She snatched the boarding pass, threatening security, threatening to have Lena removed. She was making the biggest mistake of her life. Because in 5 minutes, the man who owned the entire airline was going to board this very plane, desperately searching for one person, the woman Karen was trying to kick off. The air in Chicago O'Hare's International Terminal was thick with a familiar, anxious energy. It was the smell of jet fuel stale coffee and the unspoken tensions of thousands of people in transit. Dr. Lena Morgan pulled her carry-on, the smooth glide of its wheels, a stark contrast to the jittery thrum in her chest. She was a crisis manager. Her entire career was built on walking into burning buildings, metaphorical ones at least, and calmly guiding everyone to safety. She was the one you called when your stock was plummeting, your spokesperson was just arrested, or your new product had a tendency to well explode. Today, the burning building was Global Stratus Airlines. They were in free fall. A devastating investigative report had exposed a systemic decade-long issue with falsified maintenance logs on their long-haul fleet. The public was terrified the stock had evaporated, and the board was in a blind panic. They had called her, paid her an astronomical fee, and booked her on the next flight to their London headquarters, all in the desperate hope that she could work her magic. Lena checked her watch. Flight 902 to London Heathrow. Boarding in 10 minutes. She was flying first class, a contractual necessity she usually waived but had kept this time. She needed the sleep. She needed the space. She needed to arrive in London as a fortress of calm, not a weary traveller. She approached gate K12. The area was a chaotic cluster of passengers. The first class and priority lane was a short, velvet-roped line. At its head stood a woman who looked like she was carved from a block of ice. Her blonde hair was pulled into a bun so tight it seemed to be stretching her face. Her name tag read, Karen Reynolds, Purser. Karen was scanning boarding passes with a rhythmic, impatient flick of her wrist. Beep, beep, beep. When a young backpack-wearing student fumbled with his phone, she let out an audible theatrical sigh. "Sir, if you're not ready, please step aside. You're holding up the line." Lena felt a familiar, preemptive tightening in her stomach. She'd seen this show before. It was her turn. She stepped forward, holding out her phone with the digital boarding pass displayed clearly. Karen Reynolds didn't look at the phone. She looked at Lena. Up, down. Her eyes lingered on Lena's simple, black knit travel suit, her natural braided hair, and finally her face. "May I help you?" Karen asked. Her voice wasn't a question. It was a barrier. "Yes." Lena said, her voice polite, professional. "I'm boarding." She gestured with the phone. Karen held up a hand. "I haven't called Group 1 yet." "This is first class," Lena replied, pointing to the glowing 1A on her screen. Karen's eyes narrowed. She took the phone from Lena's hand, her fingers brushing Lena's with a coldness that felt intentional. She stared at the screen, then at Lena, then back at the screen. "This is interesting," Karen said loud enough for the people behind Lena to hear. "Is there a problem?" Lena asked, keeping her voice perfectly level. She was a professional. This was just noise. "The problem, ma'am," Karen drawled, "is that this ticket is for seat 1A, first class." "Yes, I know," Lena said. "This ticket is worth over $10,000. Karen continued, her voice rising in disbelief. "And our system shows it was booked just this morning. You'll need to step aside. I need to verify this." "Verify what exactly?" "That this ticket is yours," Karen said, her implication hanging heavy and toxic in the air. "We have issues with fraudulent bookings all the time. Please wait over there." She pointed to an empty roped-off area. "I have my ID right here," Lena said, reaching for her purse. "My passport matches my name, Lena Morgan. The booking was made by Global Stratos Corporate. You can check that too." Karen waved her off. "Everyone has a story. I need to call this in. Please step aside." The line behind Lena was growing. Faces mostly white were either staring at the floor in embarrassment or at Lena with open, judgmental curiosity. Humiliation burned on Lena's cheeks, a hot, unwelcome flush. She Dr. Lena Morgan, who had briefed 2 U.S. presidents and stared down. An entire room of hostile shareholders was being sidelined by a gate agent because her ticket was too good for her. She stepped aside. She watched as Karen beeped the next passenger through a white man in a rumpled suit with a smile. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Enjoy the flight." Lena stood in her designated shame corner, her phone still hostage in Karen's hand, and waited. The fire was already burning. The last of the economy passengers shuffled down the jet bridge, a stream of overstuffed bags and weary faces. Lena remained in her spot, a silent statue of indignation. Karen Reynolds had meticulously avoided eye contact, busying herself with manifests gate check tags and flirtatious chatter with the co-pilot. She still had Lena's phone. Finally, a ground agent, a young man named David, approached Karen. "That's everyone, Karen. Are you clear to close?" "Almost," Karen said, tapping her pen. She gestured with her chin toward Lena. "I'm still dealing with this situation." David glanced at Lena, his expression apologetic, and then back at Karen. "What situation?" "She's on the manifest. Dr. Lena Morgan, 1A, booked by corporate. There's a VIP red flag on her file, whatever that means." Karen's smile tightened. "Red flags are my specialty, David. It often means a stolen credit card or a companion ticket. You'd be surprised." She picked up Lena's phone and marched over. "All right, Lena," she said deliberately, dropping the doctor that was clearly on the boarding pass. "I've spoken with ticketing. They say the charge went through." She handed back the phone as if it were contaminated. "You can board, but I'm letting you know I will be watching." "Watching for what?" Lena asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "I run a tight ship. My first-class cabin is for the comfort and safety of our elite passengers. Any disturbances, and you'll be meeting the authorities when we land in London. Understand?" "The only disturbance so far," Lena said, her gaze as sharp as a scalpel, "is you. Now may I board the aircraft I am booked on, or would you prefer I start making calls from this gate? I have Robert Pacing's personal number on speed dial." The mention of the CEO's name made Karen flinch, but she recovered quickly. "Names don't impress me. Your ticket does. Get on." She turned her back and strode down the jet bridge. Lena took a deep breath, recentering herself. She was not a victim. She was a professional with a job to do. This was a distraction. She walked down the ramp, the plush carpet of the jet bridge muffling her footsteps. She stepped onto the aircraft. The recycled air and the soft, corporate-approved instrumental music washed over her. The first-class cabin was to the left, a husky, quiet world of beige pods and brushed aluminum. Karen Reynolds was there, already directing a flight attendant. "And make sure Mr. Thompson's scotch is poured before takeoff. He's a million-miler. She saw Lena and her face soured. Seat 1A, by the window. Lena moved to the spacious pod, sliding her briefcase under the ottoman and placing her carry-on in the overhead bin. She slid into the plush leather seat and immediately pulled out her laptop. She had 6 hours of work before they landed. A man in seat 2B, the Mr. Thompson Karen had mentioned, leaned over. He was in his late 50s, with a kind, weathered face. That was unprofessional, he whispered, gesturing back toward the galley. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Thank you, Lena said, offering a small, tight smile. It's just noise. Well, it was out of line, he insisted. I'm David Thompson, by the way. I fly this route every week. Lena Morgan, a pleasure, she said, wanting to end the conversation and dive into her work. But Karen wasn't finished. She approached Lena's pod, a silver tray in her hand. Pre-departure beverage. We have champagne, orange juice, or water. Just water, please, Lena said, not looking up from her screen. Karen placed the glass on the console. Then she noticed Lena's open laptop. On the screen was the header of a document, Global Stratos, Project Phoenix, Internal Briefing. Eyes only. Karen's eyes widened. She didn't know what Project Phoenix was, but eyes only was a clear directive. Her suspicion immediately curdled into a new, more aggressive form. This woman wasn't just a freeloader. She was a corporate spy. Ma'am? Karen said, her voice sharp. You'll have to put that away. Laptops are not permitted before takeoff. We're still boarding, Lena said, finally looking up. The door is open and you're still serving drinks. The rule is after the door is closed, and we're pushing back. The rule, Karen snapped, is what I say it is. That document looks confidential. I'm not sure you're authorized to have it. This was a new level of absurdity. You're not sure I'm authorized to have my own work. How do I know it's yours? Karen challenged. You were unsure about my ticket. Lena shot back, her patience finally fracturing. Now you're unsure about my laptop. It seems you're unsure about a great many things except your own authority to harass me. The cabin, which had been buzzing with the quiet sounds of settling in, went silent. Mr. Thompson in 2B winced. Karen's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. That's it. You are a security risk. You've been combative since the gate. You're in possession of sensitive company materials. I am not comfortable with you on my flight. She unhooked the intercom phone from the bulkhead. This is Purser Reynolds. I need a ground supervisor at the first-class boarding door immediately. We have a non-compliant passenger for removal. Lena was stunned. This was no longer a microaggression. It was a full-blown, career-threatening assault. Being removed from a flight, especially for security reasons, would flag her for life. She would be detained. She would miss the meeting. The Global Stratos deal would collapse, and it would be her fault. Karen, don't, Mr. Thompson said, unbuckling his seatbelt. You are making a catastrophic mistake. This lady has done nothing wrong. Stay out of this, Mr. Thompson, Karen snarled. This is an FAA-mandated security matter. Sir, she said to a large male flight attendant, please stand by the passenger. Do not let her leave her seat. Lena felt the cold prickle of genuine fear. She was trapped. The silence in the cabin was no longer polite. It was suffocating. Every eye in first class was on Lena, who sat perfectly still, her hands resting on her laptop. The male flight attendant, a burly man named Rick, stood awkwardly near her pod, clearly unhappy. Ma'am, Rick said, his voice low. If you just put the laptop away, maybe we can, smooth this over. She wants to remove me from the flight. Lena stated, her voice a flat, emotionless line. Putting my laptop away won't change that. She's already made the call. Karen stood by the galley arms, crossed, a smug, righteous look on her face. She was the queen of this small, pressurized kingdom, and she had just vanquished a threat. The ground supervisor would arrive, this woman would be escorted off, and it would be a story Karen would tell for years. You'll never believe this woman I had to kick out of 1A. The seconds ticked by. Lena's mind was racing running scenarios. She could call Robert Pacing now. But what would that look like? Mr. CEO, I can't make the meeting to save your company because your flight attendant is having me arrested. It sounded insane. It was insane. She could fight. She could stand up, make a scene, quote, aviation regulations. But she knew how that would end. A black woman yelling on a plane, being physically restrained by a large white male attendant. The optics would be disastrous. The video would be on social media before they even got her to the terminal. Her career, built on an image of unshakable calm, would be over. She was checkmated. Karen, David Thompson said, standing up fully. I am a member of your Executive Platinum Million Miler program. I spend over $100,000 with this airline every year. I am telling you as your most loyal customer that you are wrong. This woman is your passenger. She has a valid ticket. She is quiet and professional. You are the one being non-compliant. Karen's face twisted. Mr. Thompson, I'm shocked. You, of all people. This woman could be, I don't know, filming us stealing trade secrets. She's looking at a PowerPoint, he scoffed. Sit down, David, Lena said, her voice full of authority. Please. I appreciate your help, but you're getting involved in something you don't need to. She looked at him, a silent thank you that also carried a warning. He slowly sat back down, his face a mask of frustration. From the jet bridge, two new figures appeared. The first was the ground supervisor Karen had called a man named Omar, who looked flustered and tired. The second was not. The second man was tall, thin, and vibrating with an energy that screamed, I am losing millions of dollars per second. He was in a bespoke dark blue suit, but his tie was loose and his graying hair was disheveled, as if he'd been dragging his hands through it. He was Robert Pacing, the CEO of Global Stratos Airlines. He stormed onto the plane, his eyes scanning the cabin wildly. Where is she? Is she here? Did she make it? Omar. The supervisor looked baffled. Sir, Mr. Pacing. We were called for a removal. Robert Pacing's head snapped toward him. A what? I don't have time for removals. I'm looking for. Dr. Morgan is Dr. Lena Morgan on this aircraft. The entire cabin froze. Karen Reynolds's blood seemed to drain from her face, leaving a pale, sickly mask. Her smugness evaporated, replaced by a dawning, horrifying confusion. Lena, who had been bracing for the arrival of airport police, slowly raised her hand. Robert, she said, her voice cutting through the silence. I'm here. Robert Pacing's eyes locked on Lena. The tension flooding his body seemed to drain away, replaced by a wave of profound, desperate relief. He rushed over to her pod, his expensive shoes sinking into the plush carpet. He didn't seem to notice the other passengers, the flight attendants, or the stunned supervisor. Lena, thank God, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. He actually reached out and gripped the side of her pod as if for support. Thank God you're here. The thing we talked about. It's worse. The London office is on fire. Metaphorically. I mean, Jesus, I hope it's metaphorically. I've been on the phone with the board for 3 hours. They're sharpening their knives, Lena. He was rambling, a man on the edge of a corporate abyss. Robert, Lena said, her voice calm and steady, a stark contrast to his. Breathe. I'm here. I have the briefing. I'm ready. Good. Good, he panted. He finally seemed to register the other people in the scene. He looked at Rick, the male flight attendant still standing guard. He looked at Omar, the supervisor. And then his eyes fell on Karen Reynolds. He didn't know her name. He didn't need to. He just saw a purser standing by the galley, looking like she'd just seen a ghost. What? Robert Pacing said, his voice dropping several degrees. Is going on here? Why are you all standing around her pod like this? Why does she look like she's being detained? The silence that followed was absolute. Karen Reynolds opened her mouth, but only a small squeaking sound came out. Omar. The ground supervisor stepped forward, consulting his clipboard. Mr. Pacing, sir. I was called by Purser Reynolds. She reported a non-compliant passenger in 1A, a security risk. She requested removal. Robert Pacing's head swiveled very, very slowly from Omar to Karen. He was not a stupid man. He was a CEO who had clawed his way to the top of a brutal industry. He could read a room, and he could definitely read the toxic, racialized subtext of this particular room. A security risk, he repeated. He looked back at Lena at her laptop with the Project Phoenix brief at her calm, dignified face. Dr. Morgan, is a security risk. She wouldn't put her laptop away, sir. Karen stammered, her voice suddenly high and reedy. And she had a highly confidential document open. I was protecting the company. It was, Lena had to admit, a decent lie, a plausible procedure-based excuse. But Robert Pacing wasn't buying it. His eyes flicked down to Lena's ticket on Karen's manifest screen. Dr. Lena Morgan. Seat 1A. Booked Corp. EEO. Flag VIP Red. VIP Red didn't mean stolen credit card. It meant personal guest of the CEO. You were protecting the company, Robert said, his voice dangerously soft. From the person I hired to save the company. The person who is quite possibly the only human being on this planet who can stop this airline from liquidating in the next 72 hours. That's who you decided to harass. I didn't know, Karen wailed. You didn't know? Robert's voice suddenly became a roar. It wasn't the shout of a hothead. It was the controlled, terrifying sound of a man who could and would end careers with a single word. Did you look at her ticket? Did you see the doctor? Did you see the corporate booking? Or did you just see a black woman in your first-class cabin and decide she didn't belong? No, sir. I would never. I was just following procedure, and this finally is what broke Lena's silence. No, she said, and her voice, though quiet, cut through Karen's panicked denials. She wasn't. She harassed me at the gate. She accused me of fraud. She confiscated my phone. She told me she would be watching me. She called for my removal before I even opened my laptop, claiming I was non-compliant for what? For existing in this seat. Every word was a nail in Karen's coffin. Robert Pacing looked at Karen Reynolds, his face a mask of cold fury. You, he said, are a liability. You are a walking, talking, multi-million-dollar lawsuit. He turned to Omar. Get her off my plane. Sir, Omar was confused. You mean the passenger? No. Robert yelled. I mean her. Get this employee off my aircraft. Now. She is not to fly. She is to be escorted to a holding room at corporate security. She is suspended effective immediately. Her employment is terminated pending the lawsuit I am sure is coming. Karen Reynolds looked as if he had physically struck her. What? No, you can't, I have been with this airline for 25 years. And in 25 minutes, Robert shot back, you've managed to undo a 25-year career. Get her out, Rick. He pointed at the male flight attendant. You're in charge of the cabin. Get these people comfortable. Apologize for the delay. Get Dr. Morgan whatever she needs. Water scotch. A new airline. Just water is fine, Lena said, closing her laptop. And I need us to be in the air. We have work to do. Karen Reynolds didn't move. She was in shock, her feet rooted to the floor. Mr. Pacing, she whispered. Tears now streaming down her face, leaving pale tracks in her thick foundation. Please, I have a mortgage. You should have thought of that, Robert said, turning his back on her. You should have thought of that before you decided to play God with someone's life. Omar and Rick, both looking horrified, took Karen by the arms. She didn't fight. She was a ghost, a hollowed-out shell. As they led her past the first-class pods, her eyes met Lena's. In them, Lena saw no remorse. She saw no understanding of what she had done wrong. She saw only the raw, unadulterated shock of a queen who had just been dethroned. As she disappeared down the jet bridge, a smattering of applause broke out from the passengers in first class. Mr. Thompson in 2B was clapping the loudest. The cabin door was sealed. The plane, now under the command of Rick, the hastily promoted purser, began its pushback. Robert Pacing did not take a first-class pod. He pulled the jump seat in the galley directly across from the cockpit and motioned for Lena to join him on the small bench opposite. The flight attendants gave them a wide berth. I am so sorry, Robert said, scrubbing his face with his hands. Lena, my God. That was... I have no words. It was illuminating, Lena said. She was all business now. The emotional sting of the encounter had been filed away, catalogued under deal with later. Right now she was in crisis mode. Illuminating it was a disaster, Robert said. She's everything we're fighting against. That's the brand Lena. That's the image, the arrogance, the entitlement, the idea that we are better than the people we serve. That's what the maintenance logs were all about. We know better. The rules don't apply to us. And she just embodied it. In front of our most valuable passengers. She embodied, Lena said, her gaze steady. A culture of bias that you've allowed to grow. She felt safe doing that, Robert. She felt empowered to do that. That's the problem. Karen Reynolds isn't the disease. She's a symptom. Robert winced. You're right. God, you're right. And that's why you're here. The engines whined to life, a low rumble that grew into a deafening roar as the 707 taxied toward the runway. For the next 20 minutes, they sat in silence. As the plane lifted off, banking hard over Lake Michigan, the force pressed them into their seats. Only when the fasten seatbelt sign dinged off did Robert speak again. It's bad, he said, pulling a thin tablet from his briefcase. The whistleblower isn't just a whistleblower anymore. He's talking to 60 Minutes. He's got receipts, memos, emails. Emails from who? Lena asked. My predecessor, and some of the current board. They knew Lena. They knew about the pencil whipping of the engine blade inspections. They knew, and they ran the numbers. They decided it was cheaper to risk a catastrophic failure and pay the settlements than to ground the fleet and replace the parts. Lena felt a chill. This was no longer just PR. This was criminal. You're telling me you have a fleet of 200 aircraft that could— No, I grounded them, Robert said, his voice frantic. The moment I found out, that's why the stock is dead. That's why we're cancelling 60% of our routes. We're bleeding. We're bleeding out. The board is meeting in London to fire me and install a transition CEO who will chop up the company and sell it for parts. So what is my job? Lena asked. Am I here to save the company, or am I here to write your golden parachute speech? You're here to give Project Phoenix. He said, his eyes suddenly sharp and focused. You're here to walk into that boardroom tomorrow and give them the one thing they don't have. A way out. A story. A story, Lena repeated, unimpressed. Yes, not a lie. A story. A new story. Right now, our story is global Stratos, arrogant, lying, greedy, dangerous. We're the villains. You're going to give them a new story. Global Stratos, the reckoning. We're grounding the fleet. We're funning the executives who knew. We're selling off the old guard's assets. And we are creating a new airline from the ashes. We're going to be the most transparent, safest, most customer-focused airline in the world. We're going to put our mechanics' names on the side of the planes. I don't know. Lena was quiet for a long moment. She processed the information, the arrogance, the short-sightedness, the sheer criminal stupidity. And then she thought of Karen Reynolds. You're right, Lena said. I am. Robert looked surprised. Yes, but not about the mechanics' names. Your problem is exactly what I just experienced. You have a culture of rot. It's in your maintenance bays and it's in your first-class cabins. You don't just have a safety problem, Robert. You have a people problem. You don't get to be the safest airline if your own staff are active liabilities. You don't get to be customer-focused when your purser is racially profiling your passengers. She leaned in. So here's the story. We're not just grounding the fleet. We are rebuilding the airline from the ground up. And it starts not just with engine parts, but with human parts. A complete top-to-bottom audit of who you employ and why they feel they can act this way. Top to bottom, bias training, Robert suggested. No, Lena said with a dismissive wave. Bias training is what you do after you get sued. It's a band-aid. I'm talking about a purge. You're firing the old guard on the board. Good. We're going to announce that. And we're also going to announce a new zero-tolerance policy for customer-facing employees. We're going to use the video from that plane. Video what video? Lena pointed her chin toward the cabin. Mr. Thompson in 2B. He's been recording this whole thing. Ever since the gate, I'd wager. Robert Pacing's face went pale again. He recorded that the Karen thing. I'd bet my entire fee on it, Lena said. And right now, he's probably deciding which news outlet to sell it to. Before we land, Robert, you are going to go to seat 2B. You are going to apologize to Mr. Thompson for the disturbance to his flight. You are going to thank him for his loyalty. And you are going to ask him for that video. You're going to tell him you need it for your zero-tolerance internal review. And what if he says no? He won't, Lena said. He wants to help. He wants to be the good guy. You're going to give him the chance. And then we are going to leak that video. Robert looked at her utterly baffled. We are going to leak a video of our own employee. being racist. Yes, Lena said, a predatory calm settling over her. We're not going to let 60 Minutes or some random blogger control our story. We are going to control it. We're going to release the video ourselves, and we're going to pair it with a statement. Not from you, but from me. From you. Yes, the victim. An open letter from Dr. Lena Morgan, Global Stratos' new head of whatever. Cultural accountability. We're going to get in front of the narrative. We're going to say, this happened. It is unacceptable, and this is what we're doing about it. We are going to make Karen Reynolds the face of the old Global Stratos, and we're going to make me the face of the new one. Robert Pacing stared at her. He was a shark in a world of sharks, but he was looking at a creature he didn't even have a name for. Lena, he said, his voice full of awe. You are terrifying. I am, she agreed. Your only chance. For the remainder of the flight, the galley of Flight 902 became a war room. Lena on her laptop drafted and redrafted the Project Phoenix presentation, weaving in the new aggressive narrative. It was no longer a simple PR plan. It was a manifesto. She gutted the airline's old values statement and replaced it with a single brutal sentence: accountability in the air, integrity on the ground. Robert Pacing, for his part, was a man reborn. He was a CEO, and CEOs at their core are problem solvers. He had been drowning, and Lena had just handed him a life raft, albeit a life raft made of dynamite. He did exactly as she instructed. He approached David Thompson in 2B, his voice a low, confidential murmur. Lena couldn't hear the words, but she saw the body language. Thompson, at first wary, slowly started to nod. His shoulders relaxed. He pulled out his phone. There was a quiet exchange. Robert came back to the galley, a flash drive in his hand. You were right, he said, his voice electric. He got everything. The gate, the confrontation at the seat, the security risk part. It's worse than I thought. It's unairable. Oh, it's very airable, Lena said, not looking up. And it's the pivot. It's the proof that the rot isn't just in the paperwork. It's in the people. When they landed at Heathrow, a black car was waiting for them on the tarmac, a privilege reserved for royalty and the truly desperate. As Lena and Robert were whisked away, the other first-class passengers, including Mr. Thompson, deplaned normally. But as Thompson passed the galley, he caught Lena's eye. He gave her a single respectful nod. She returned it. An alliance had been forged and dissolved in the same 6-hour flight. They were driven to a sterile high-tech conference center, not the official Global Stratos headquarters. The bunker, Robert called it. The boardroom was a long, dark wood table surrounded by 12 of the most grim-faced, high-net-worth individuals Lena had ever seen. They were old money, new tech, and pure predatory finance. And they were all uniformly angry. Robert, a man at the head of the table, a steely-eyed man named Marcus Croft, said, "You're late, and you've brought a guest." "This," Robert said, his voice ringing with a newfound, almost fanatical confidence, "is Dr. Lena Morgan. She is our new Chief Accountability Officer, and she is going to present Project Phoenix." "We're not here for presentations, Robert," Croft snapped. "We're here for your resignation." "You can have it," Robert said, shocking the room. "I'll sign it right now, after you listen to her, because she's not here to save my job. She's here to save your money." That got their attention. For the next hour, Lena commanded the room. She was not a petitioner. She was a commander. She laid out the crisis in unflinching terms. She detailed the maintenance scandal, the criminal liability, the culture of rot. And then she played the video. She projected David Thompson's footage onto a massive high-definition screen. The boardroom watched in horrified silence the entire 10-minute encounter. They saw Karen Reynolds, a 25-year employee, in her official uniform, dripping with scorn and racial animus. They heard her accuse Lena of fraud. They heard her dismiss a million-miler. They heard her lie about security protocols and confidential documents. When the video ended, the silence in the room was absolute. One of the board members, an older woman named Anne, was pale. "My God," she whispered, "that Lena said is your brand. That is global Stratos, not the pretty commercials, not the lie flat beds. That." "She's been fired, obviously," Marcus Croft said, his face like thunder. "She was suspended," Robert clarified. "I'm firing her," Lena said, her voice a whip crack. "My first act as Chief Accountability Officer is to terminate Karen Reynolds, but my second act is to release this video." The board erupted. "Are you insane? That's brand suicide. We'll be sued from every angle." Lena waited for the noise to die. "You're already being sued. You're already dead. You're just waiting for the coffin. What I'm offering is a resurrection. We release the video tonight. We release it on our own social media channels. We don't hide. We attach a statement not from Robert, but from me. It will say, 'My name is Dr. Lena Morgan. This happened to me today on a global Stratos flight. It was ugly. It was racist. And it was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a corporate culture that has gone unchecked for too long. That's why today I am joining Global Stratos as their new independent Chief Accountability Officer. My first job was to fire the employee in this video. My second job is to fix this company. We are grounding the fleet, we are cleaning house, and we are starting over. This is day one." She looked around the table, meeting every eye. "You don't need a new CEO, you need an exorcism, and I'm the only one qualified to do it." Marcus Croft stared at her. He looked at Robert. He looked back at Lena. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. "Robert," he said, "get your resignation letter and shred it. Dr. Morgan, welcome aboard." The statement and video went live at 9:00 a.m. London time, just as the New York Stock Exchange was waking up. It was as Lena had intended, a nuclear bomb. The internet, a creature that feeds on outrage, tore into it. At first, the reaction was pure, unadulterated fury at Karen Reynolds. Her face, her name, her smug entitlement were plastered across every social media platform. She was within an hour the most hated person in the world. Airline Karen became a global trending hashtag, but then the second, more subtle wave of the narrative hit just as Lena had planned. The conversation shifted to Lena herself. Her statement was so raw, so honest, and so utterly unprecedented that it stunned the media. "A company, apologizing and fixing it," one headline read. "Global Stratos hires its own victim to clean house," read another. The stock, which had been in a free fall, did something bizarre. It steadied. It didn't go up, but it stopped dropping. The market was holding its breath. For Karen Reynolds, the karma was swift, brutal, and total. She had landed back in Chicago, her suspension already in effect. Her phone had been blowing up, but she'd assumed it was just local managers. When she finally turned it on in the taxi home, it essentially melted in her hand. Thousands of messages, texts from friends, family, and people she hadn't spoken to in decades. "Is this you? What did you do? I am so ashamed of you." Then came the news trucks. They were parked outside her tidy suburban 2-bedroom condo before she even got her key in the door. She was a private citizen, but she had become a public figure, a symbol of everything wrong with the world. She was, in a word, ruined. Her union, which she had paid into for 25 years, dropped her. They released a statement saying her actions were not representative and indefensible. No lawyer would take her wrongful termination case. She was toxic. She lost her condo because she couldn't make the mortgage. She tried to get a job at a coffee shop, but the 19-year-old manager recognized her from TikTok. You're her. Get out." The hard karma wasn't just losing her job. It was losing her identity. For her entire adult life, she had been Persa Karen, the queen of the skies. Her job was her power, her status, her world. She had wielded her small, arbitrary power like a weapon, and now, without it, she was nothing. She was a pariah. The last anyone heard, she was working a night shift stocking shelves in a 24-hour convenience store in a different state, her name legally changed. The karma was not just a punishment, it was an erasure. For Lena, the next 6 months were the hardest of her life. She moved to London. She worked 20-hour days. She Robert and the new board, led by a humbled Marcus Croft, tore Global Stratos down to the studs and rebuilt it. They fired over 200 managers and executives, including the ones who had signed off on the maintenance logs. They brought in the whistleblower and put him in charge of a new empowered and independent safety commission. And Lena, true to her word, cleaned house. She implemented a new training program, not just for bias, but for humanity. It was simple: see the passenger, not the ticket. She created a direct line for complaints, not to a call center, but to her office. She personally reviewed the footage from every single incident on a plane. She became the soul of the airline. 1 year later, almost to the day. The setting was with a deep sense of irony. Chicago O'Hare. But this was not the tense, crowded confines of Gate K-12. This was Hangar 4, the largest maintenance bay on the airfield, scrubbed clean and filled with 1,000 lights. The air didn't smell of stale coffee and jet fuel. It smelled of new paint, catered food, and the faint celebratory fizz of champagne. Where once there had been a line of anxious travelers, there was now an audience of invited press-humbled board members and the first ever graduating class of employees from the Stratus Phoenix Accountability Program. At the front of the hangar, on a large, brightly lit stage, stood Dr. Lena Morgan. The lectern in front of her bore the new company logo, a sleek, powerful phoenix, its wings spread in a professional, authoritative blue and gold. Lena looked out at the crowd. In the front row, she saw Robert Pacing and Marcus Croft. They were not the same men she had met in that London bunker. The predatory shark-like energy was gone, replaced by a quieter, more respectful intensity. They were grayer, perhaps, but they were also impossibly the most successful they had ever been. Next to them sat David Thompson, the man from seat 2B. Lena had personally invited him. He caught her eye and gave her a subtle, proud wink. Lena took a breath, the quiet sound of it echoing in the microphone. She was thinking of the last time she had stood in a place like this, at this airport. She remembered the feeling of the cold, sterile floor, the humiliation burning on her cheeks, the righteous, confident smugness on Karen Reynolds's face, the feeling of being trapped. Now she was at the center of a new world, one she had built. 1 year ago, she began, her voice calm and strong, filling the cavernous space. I arrived at this airport. I was a consultant hired to fix a problem. But before I even stepped on the plane, I encountered a different problem. I encountered a company that was sick, a company that had mistaken arrogance for authority and its own rigid procedures for principle. She paused, letting the words hang. Many of you saw the video that surfaced from that flight. You saw a moment of profound personal and professional ugliness. You saw a passenger being humiliated, profiled, and threatened by an employee who felt safe doing so. She believed in her heart that she was protecting her cabin, that she was the guardian of her company's brand. And in a terrible, twisted way, she was right. She was the brand. A murmur went through the press section. This was more candid than they had expected. Today, Lena continued, that brand is dead. That company is gone. We did not paper over the cracks. We did not just fire the bad apple. We did not offer a simple one-day bias training and a PR-friendly apology. We did the hardest thing a corporation can do. We admitted that the rot went to the core. We took this company down to the studs. We faced the criminal investigations. We fired the executives who signed off on lies. And we began the long, painful, and expensive work of rebuilding. People ask me about the woman from that flight, she said, her voice becoming more personal. They ask me about karma. They seem satisfied to hear she lost her job, her home, and her reputation. But that is not karma. That is a consequence. A consequence is simple, it is fast, and it is finite. True karma, she said, her voice rising with passion, is a different beast. True karma is not just punishment. True karma is change. It is a profound rebalancing of the scales. True karma of this. She turned and gestured behind her. With a flare of dramatic stagecraft, a massive curtain dropped, revealing a gleaming, brand-new aircraft. On its tail was the Phoenix soaring. This, Lena declared, is the Phoenix 1. It is the first of our new fleet. But it is not just a plane. It is a promise. It is the physical proof that you can take something broken, something ugly, something grounded by its own failures, and turn it into a catalyst for something new, something better. We did not simply rise from the ashes. We had to become the ashes first, and be reborn. Stratos Phoenix isn't just a new name on a building, she concluded, looking directly into the nearest camera. It is a new contract with every single one of you. We are not perfect. We never will be. But we are, and will be, accountable. From the mechanic who now digitally signs their name to every repair, to the captain who is required to greet their passengers. We fell. We know it. And we have spent 3 days earning the right to rise again. Welcome to day 1. The applause was thunderous. It wasn't polite. It was emotional, a genuine roar of relief and excitement. Employees, new and old, were on their feet. Later, as champagne was being served, Robert Pacing made his way to her. He looked peaceful. "Lena," he said, "I have run out of superlatives for your speeches. Brilliant just doesn't cover it." "It was just the truth, Robert," she said, taking a glass from a tray. "The truth is all we have." "You know," he said, clinking his glass against hers. "I almost thank her sometimes. Karen." Lena raised an eyebrow. "Not for what she did," he clarified quickly, "but for being the accelerant, for being so perfectly, horribly wrong at exactly the right time. If it hadn't been you, if it hadn't been that perfect, horrifying storm, I might have tried to save it, the old way, You didn't let me. You didn't just save my job, Lena. You saved me." "We saved the company, Robert," Lena said. "Now the hard part begins." His face, so relaxed, tightened in a brief, familiar flash of panic. "What do you mean?" "What's next?" "The hard part for you," she said, smiling. "My contract is up." "What?" he said, his voice a low croak. "No, you can't. You're the phoenix. You're the soul of this company. You can't leave, Robert," she said, her voice gentle. "I was the surgeon, the crisis manager. The patient is stable. The cancer is in remission. Now you have to be the primary care physician. You have to do the daily work, the checkups, the preventative care to make sure it never ever comes back." "But what will you do?" he asked, still looking lost. "Another company. You could write your own ticket. Hell, you could run this one." Lena laughed, a genuine, relaxed sound. It was the laugh of someone who had finished the hardest exam of her life and knew she had passed. She picked up her briefcase, the same one she'd had on Flight 902. "I've been a consultant, a CAO, a board member, and for one very memorable hour, a security risk. I think," she said, "I just want to be a passenger for a while." "Where will you go?" "I'm thinking of taking a vacation, a long one," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I hear London is nice this time of year. I've already booked my flight." "Stratos Phoenix, Flight 902. Robert let out a huge, relieved laugh. "First class, I assume. Of course," Lena said, turning to walk away into the crowd of her new redeemed company. "Robert, I've more than earned it. And that's what we call hard karma. Karen Reynolds learned that day that bigotry and arrogance have a price, and this time it cost her everything. Her job, her reputation, her entire future, all gone in a matter of minutes because she judged a book by its cover. Dr. Lena Morgan wasn't just a passenger. She was the person hired to save the entire airline. What do you think? Was firing Karen on the spot the right move, or was the real karma the way Lena rebuilt the entire company in response? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story is a powerful reminder to treat every single person with respect, because you truly never know who you're talking to. For more real-life stories filled with drama twists and karma, make sure you hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and subscribe to our channel. We have new stories coming for you every week, and you don't want to miss what happens next.